Right. And welcome to those of you joining us on YouTube as well. I also want to thank Itasca Bank for sponsoring this webinar. Sponsors like Itasca Bank help us to keep these webinars free for everybody. Contact me for more information on sponsoring. If you know of a business, if you have a business that is interested in sponsoring our webinars. But you can also help us to keep these webinars free. At the end, on your browser window, you'll have a page with a bunch of resources of things that you might be interested in, such as our native plant guide, rain barrel information, and so much more, including our virtual tip jar. So if you're enjoying these webinars, I encourage you to donate to help TCF continue to do all the awesome stuff that we do, because we do so much more than just webinars. And if you check the box and become a member, you'll get to enjoy all of the cool benefits that come with being a member. All right, all of that is done. Now, I am going to turn it over to my good friend, Lindsay and Elliot. I think, Elliot, you're going to be behind the scenes, right? Answering questions and posting links and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say any questions and stuff I can help answer in the chat, or if anything else comes up, I might come off mute just to insert my 2 cents for like 2 seconds.
All right, fantastic. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Lindsay. Take it away, Lindsay.
And I am going to share my screen. Share. I'm going to make sure, maybe Elliot, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the slides, but no notes, right? Okay. That is a new Zoom skill that I learned. So just really quick, some of the same housekeeping stuff. I'm Lindsay Keeney. I'm the Conservation Director at the Illinois Environmental Council. I am getting over a cold from my kids who are back at daycare. So we have had every bug in the county. So excuse my nasally voice. I do have a nasally voice, but not normally this nasally. So excuse me if I have to cough or snort and sniffle. I'm really excited to share with you guys about our Illinois 30 by 30 initiative coalition, the work that we're doing around this. I'm pleased to see that some of you have heard about it already. I might pop off video, that way my rural internet only has to do one thing at a time. So let me pop there, but you all should still be able to hear me. I'm gonna pop back here to the beginning. Really quick, Elliot, do you want to say a few words about like what IEC does, who we are?
Yeah, for sure. So the Illinois Environmental Council has been around for a number of years. I'm forgetting the exact start date now, which I should know by now. But we're really, a big part of our mission is representing a very large coalition of environmental stakeholders within Illinois, nonprofit groups, a lot of like local community organizations, and a lot of other folks to really be a voice for them. Especially in policy decisions that are being made at the state capitol here in Springfield. It's been a really cool experience. We've helped do a lot of really big things in the legislature over the last few years, including the big energy package that just passed this last year. We've got people on our staff that have been working for years on that and really helping build out the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. Was a big part of our work and stuff. So yeah, I mean, we're really just kind of the voice for a lot of environmental groups throughout Illinois, especially those that don't necessarily have the, resources and capacity to be able to reach out to a lot of legislators and that kind of thing. But yeah, we're kind of representing a lot of different folks. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, our tagline used to be, we were the lobbyists for the environment, because big ag has lobbyists, a lot of the polluters have lobbyists. And so sort of the enviros and the green and nature got together to form IEC so that we had a voice there too. And we are an affiliate organization. Elliot talked a little bit about that. The Conservation Foundation is an affiliate of ours, along with a suite of other really fantastic organizations. The Nature Conservancy in Illinois, the Audubon Society, just everyone doing great work. I will just really quick, Elliot and I's role at the Illinois Environmental Council, and we'll deny this if you talk to any of our other staff that we said this, but we have the absolute best job at IEC. We get to work with all of the fun stuff. So we do outdoors, open space, conservation, sustainable agriculture, clean water, nutrient loss, just really all the things that like we love and are true to our hearts. So he mentioned some of the other things that IEC works on: recycling, clean energy. Elliot and I are your staff for like farming and conservation, and that's the work that we get to do. Some of our recent work was we take legislators out, we get them out of their office, outside on the ground. We put them in canoes and take them on hikes, and we make sure that they know what a silver carp looks like when they hear about them. We make sure that when we say nutrient loss reduction strategy, they can remember what a buffer zone looks like, or what a cover crop looks like. And all of these sort of words and phrases that we throw around, we try to make sure those people making the decisions and voting on the bills have actual memories and knowledge that links to those things. And so what one you guys will be excited to hear about is that Elliot, I didn't get to make it, but Elliot just recently took legislators out to a tour of the Conservation Foundation's McDonald Farm, and they got to see all the pieces there. And I think we even sent legislators home with some fruits and vegetables, some produce. So that's the kind of things that we get to do, and we're thrilled about these partnerships that let us do that. So all of that introduction aside, let me get into why you all tuned in today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Illinois 30 by 30 Coalition, actually a lot about it. But I know there's a lot of confusion out here. The next slide is, what the heck does 30 by 30 mean? When I was first getting into this, when I was thinking about like, how can Illinois make a difference? I was trying to think and learn where this idea, this 30 by 30, everyone says 30 by 30. What does it mean? Where did it come from? So when we talk about it, it's the idea that we are wanting to protect 30% of land and water by 2030. But all of these other words and phrases are sort of associated with this initiative and in the same realm. So you hear about nature-based solutions, and you hear about 50 by 50 and the half earth theory. I've got the picture of E.O. Wilson's amazing book about the half earth theory. You hear about the global deal for nature, and then there's this America the Beautiful plan. And what is this? Is it a campaign? Is it policy? Is it a pledge, an agreement? Like, what is this huge thing everyone's talking about? So there's a whole lot to unpack there, but I'm going to talk about it at a few different scales. We have the global scale. We're going to talk about what it means for the US as a country, and then the fun part, the part that we get to work on and think about and come up with the questions, and hopefully as this work continues, come up with the answers and solutions, is thinking about how Illinois can contribute, how we can be a leader in conservation, and what this movement campaign can mean for us as a state. So back to that global scale, there is a global nature crisis. This graphic from BBC is on here showing the biodiversity decline over the last, my brain says 30 years, think about 1970, but it's actually almost 50 years. It is 50 years. So in January of this year, of 2021, a group of scientists got together and they issued this warning that humanity is causing a rapid loss of biodiversity, and with it, Earth's ability to support complex life. And so when I was thinking about all of this, you hear about climate change, and you hear about this biodiversity and this loss of species, and how do these two things relate? And so the big thing that came out with this is that they also reference this paper from 2019, and they talk about how the Paris Climate Agreement, which is monumental in itself and imperative to curb greenhouse gas emissions, they conclude that it'll do little by itself to save the planet's collapsing biodiversity and preserve the massive ecosystems that humanity depends upon, that we are degrading as a species. So they're basically saying we're not trying to save nature for nature's sake. it made clear all these links between biodiversity and things like food security and clean water, and not just in poor countries that you think about it affecting. They wrote down and drew out all the things that are going to happen right here in the US and how it's going to affect our water and our food system. And these pieces will collapse if something isn't done. So I'm going to throw the link. Oh, maybe I can't access the chat right now. I will get you this link to the 2019 report if anyone's in the 2021 report, if anyone's super interested in reading about that. It's really fascinating. So we'll get that too. But so that's at the global scale. Just in summary, all these really cool, really intelligent, smart scientists got together and reviewed huge bodies of work and wrote this paper that said, hey, we need to think about climate change and we need to think about capturing carbon, but we also need to look at the way that we are ruining habitat and how that's going to cause collapse of things like our food systems and our clean water and all of those pieces. So then we talked about this global nature crisis. What is happening at our scale, at the US scale? It's not great news there either. The nature crisis at the US scale is that 24 million acres of natural area has been lost nationwide since 2001. That is an area the size bigger than Indiana. That adds up to a football field of natural area every 30 seconds. That's 100 yards for folks that aren't sports fans. And right now, there is 12% of US land that is protected. So that 12% is locked into high protection. There are policies and regulations that keep it in long-term protections. So that's 12%. 30% is going to be a long way getting there. And I'll talk about the state level here in a minute, but out west, those numbers are a lot higher. It's closer to 60% of a state, maybe in public lands. So we're a very varied country. Obviously out west, we have a lot of public land. Here in the Midwest, East Coast, it's a lot less. 3/4 of the land and water on Earth has been altered by humans. These are just some other facts about the nature crisis. We will lose a South Dakota-sized expanse of forest, wetlands, and wild places by the year 2050. And then the average distance from wild places in the continental US to the nearest development is less than a half mile when you average that all together. So that's where we stand as a country. We need to preserve habitat, capture carbon, do all of these things to mitigate climate change and mitigate the biodiversity loss. So before I get into the state, I'm gonna talk a little bit about what's going on with 30 by 30 nationwide. So we had this global response, this call to save nature. And then in the US, the idea right at the same time was picking up steam. Senator Udall passed a resolution under Trump to commit to 30% or to commit to protecting a chunk of nature. We really worked on the Land and Water Conservation Fund. IEC worked alongside partners in all sorts of other states to pass that at the federal level. And then based upon a national effort by various and diverse organizations, President Biden campaigned on the idea of 30 by 30. So after his election, he published this, he called it America the Beautiful Plan. And so that was published like maybe a month or two in, or at least it was teased a month or two in and then published a little longer into that. And so the next few slides, I'm going to detail the America the Beautiful 10-year campaign that was released by the Biden administration. Before I get into it, I will say that it is a little lackluster. It's lacking a lot of specificity. It's lacking a lot of direction for the states. And obviously there will likely be more to come from the administration. I'm sure anyone that follows politics knows that there's a whole lot going on in our country besides protecting our land and water, even though it's hugely important. We haven't seen a lot of movement on this specific piece of policy since the America the Beautiful campaign, or the America the Beautiful report was released. So the America the Beautiful 10-year campaign addresses 3 threats to lands, waters, and wildlife. It has 3 big themes: abundance, resilience, and accessibility. The comments, the public comments that they adapted into the report spoke to a need to recognize the blend of priorities, threats, conservation tools, and opportunities across such a diverse country, across regions and ecosystems. There was also a big movement to recognize the work that folks are already doing. We are not starting from scratch. We are not reinventing the wheel. This is echoed in our state work. We have fantastic organizations, groups, individuals that are doing so much already. There was a big call to build off of what's being done and recognize the voluntary efforts of farmers and ranchers, stewards of the land that are already conserving, fishermen, and already conserving and caring about the biodiversity, and the ways that we can conserve and protect our land. So the America the Beautiful campaign has 8 principles. I'm gonna breeze through this a little bit and get into our state stuff, but it is really neat to think about this as our country taking some really big steps towards codifying, protecting open space, and this commitment to doing something towards conservation. So the 8 principles that the Biden administration laid out were to pursue a collaborative and inclusive approach to conservation, conserve America's lands and waters for the benefit of all people, support locally led and locally designed conservation efforts, honor tribal sovereignty, support priorities of tribal nations, pursue conservation and restoration approaches that create jobs and support healthy communities, honor private property rights, support voluntary stewardship efforts of private landowners and fishers, use science as a guide, build on existing tools and strategies with an emphasis on flexibility and adaptive approaches. And so within the report, you feel this tension that I think everyone feels in the United States of the benefit of the individual versus the benefit to society. So how do we balance property rights and the individual's rights to do what they want with their property with what benefits society, and how we can, as a community, protect our open space. And so this report also laid out the areas where we should put our first focus. So it picked some priority things to start with. And the top one is create more parks and safe outdoor opportunities in nature deprived communities. My big complaint with this report is that it says these are the places where we should focus, and sort of leaves it at that and doesn't give any more explicit guidance to the states or the folks that are going to do this in practice. But that's also sort of an opportunity for us as a state to think about how we want to do that. So create more parks, support tribally led conservation priorities, expand collaborative conservation of fish and wildlife habitats and corridors. And there's 3 more over here. Okay. Increase equitable, well-managed, sustainable access for outdoor recreation, incentivize and reward voluntary conservation efforts of fishers, farmers, ranchers, and forest owners, and create jobs by investing in restoration and resilience. This is where the American Jobs Plan, the Civilian Climate Corps that you may have heard about, come in. There's a few more notes under these, and I'm happy to go back to them if folks have specific questions. But so that is the America the Beautiful plan. They laid out these 8 areas that they want to see movement on. And so that sort of leaves us at where does that leave Illinois? We don't have national parks. We don't have that much federally managed land. We have like a little bit of the Shawnee National Forest. We've got a little bit of national forest. But we don't have a lot of federally owned and managed land. We have a couple like federal sites. But so what do we do as a state? How do we contribute to this campaign? What does that even look like for Illinois in a state where we're an agriculture state, we're an urban state, we're a rural state? How do we maybe replicate or take the things that are being done out west or being done at the US scale and think about how to apply them to our very different state? So here in Illinois, where we stand right now, is that less than 4% of our land is in those long-term protections. So we talked about 12% at a nationwide scale, and we have 4% here in Illinois. 75% of our acreage is in agriculture. We were doing this presentation for a different group of folks, and we were practicing for it, and we were thinking about, do we need to like lay out that in Illinois we grow corn and soybeans and people can't eat corn and soybeans? And I was thinking, no, we don't need to say that. People know that. And the group that we were testing with said, no, we didn't know that. So now I make sure that I say it. We grow 4% of the food that our state eats, even though 75% of our land is planted with corn and soybeans. We rank 44th in public land ownership. In order to get to 30% in Illinois, we would need to protect 10.9 million acres. To even get to 5%, we would need 420,000 acres, which is the size of the Shawnee National Forest, plus 2 Medallion-sized chunks. Just for some ideas of the scale that we would be thinking at if Illinois decided to reach for that 30% classically protected land and water. The opportunities in our state, like we talked about all of this land in agriculture, that's a big opportunity. We have 23 million acres of cropland. What sort of things could we be doing if we put that in climate smart agriculture, regenerative practices? And then the other piece here is that to do any of this, to do a 10th or a 100th of this, we need to create jobs that will maintain and keep these pieces going in perpetuity. So that gets us to the Illinois 30 by 30 Coalition. So what are we? This is my favorite Illinois map, and this is the Illinois natural area divisions. We have 15 natural areas, which is as much as California. So these are divided into like ecosystems all the way. The Shawnee National Forest is all the way at the bottom. At the top, you have the driftless area, the Great Plains is in the middle. We are one of the most ecologically diverse states in the country. I think we forget about that a lot when we think that we are just an ag state that's flat, flyover state. We actually have a lot to offer. So I included that picture here. And so we got together to think about how Illinois can make a difference. What does a 30 by 30 campaign look like here in Illinois? And we modeled it after the Clean Jobs Coalition, which is the diverse group of stakeholders that work together for almost a decade to work on the clean energy bill that just passed. So we wanted to do that process, but in the conservation sphere. And we thought, how do we do that? And so one of the first steps is having cross-sector stakeholders. So we want to reach out to environmental advocates, land trusts, stewards of the land, community-based organizations, the ag community, sportsmen, hunters, fishers, just really anyone who has feedback, who works in this space. I will say that this is, Ellie and I have been working on this for probably a year now, and I can still say that this work is in its infancy. We are still gathering stakeholders. We are still laying it out. We're still thinking about what are the right questions to ask. We're working towards some of the answers, but by no means do we have answers to some of these questions yet. But we're in the model of the Clean Jobs Coalition. We're gathering all of these folks and organizations that are working in this sphere and working to collaborate on a shared goal of supporting biodiversity and mitigating climate change. And how are we going to do that? So this is the piece that we've gotten to through conversations with the folks that are working here. The first piece is we want to put together the puzzle. What commitments has Illinois already made as a state? We have the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan with a nutrient loss reduction strategy. We have the soil health strategy. There's campaigns within the Wildlife Action Plan for prairies and wetlands and rivers. And all of these pieces have been thoroughly researched, based in science. We have come up with goals within the Department of Natural Resources, within the Illinois Environmental Council, within different organizations have come up with goals that were based in science, based on evaluation. How do we put all those pieces together and think through which goals are the same, which work has already been done? How do we put that puzzle together? What have we committed to? What can we do next? How do we build off of that? We want to work towards an advocacy policy package. We want to be sure that we are funding land protection, land stewardship, land access in an equitable manner. We want to make sure that we're funding our agencies and our job creation pieces so that there are folks that will take care of this work into the future. The second piece is aligning the conservation community. We are notorious for working within our own silos. So the wetland folks get together, the people working in sustainable ag get together, and we do all of this really great work. But when it comes to working across those sectors and knowing what each other are up to, we're just notoriously bad at it because we are busy. So aligning those folks across sectors, combining and leveraging our power to work together to advocate, and thinking through which commitments and goals need reevaluated in 2021 with an equity lens and with taking into account the input of affected communities. We also have a big piece of this is getting community level feedback. So this is similar to the Clean Jobs Coalition. They launched a really big listening session effort throughout Illinois, and we plan on replicating that a little bit differently. We really care about getting into communities in Illinois and thinking about what their barriers are with open space access, with the effects of climate change, with do they feel safe outside, just all these different questions. So we want to do that geographically, but we also want to hear from focus groups, from sportsmen, hunters and fishers, hikers, bikers. You know, all of these people have interesting feedback, folks that use public land, folks that really recreate on private land or volunteer. So we have a suite of focus groups that we're going to listen to and hear from about what are the citizens of Illinois, how do they want to contribute to the 30 by 30 campaign. And then all of the folks that are involved in the coalition so far have really started the meat of the work, talking through issue-specific conversations. So we have a wetlands group that's really thinking about how do we protect wetlands in Illinois? Where are the highest priority ones that need protections? We have a sustainable ag group that's thinking about what are the highest priority things that to do. Is it educate farmers? Is it work with leases? We've got a group that's working with DNR because the Department of Natural Resources is a lease owner of all of the land outside of state parks. This is trailing a little bit, but they own a lot of land outside state parks and they cash rent it out to farmers. So one effort there is getting them to be a leader in climate smart agriculture. Can they work that into their leases and require that? That's one like low hanging fruit sustainable ag piece that we can do. So it's a lot of organizing and planning and conversations. And we are hoping to get to some really big outcomes. We want to ensure that Illinois can take full advantage of any federal funding that comes from the America the Beautiful campaign, the National 30 by 30 effort, the Farm Bill that's coming up. We want to make sure that the state of Illinois is ready to receive and use that funding by aligning state and federal programs. And if anyone knows, I'm sure all of you know about politics in Illinois and our budget impasses and just the missteps that have happened at the state level here. We have lost, Elliot might have more to add here, but we have left millions of dollars of federal funding on the table that our state should have had access to for conservation, for ag, for all sorts of different programs because we dropped the ball. We just weren't prepared. We didn't have matching dollars in our state budget. So that is one of the first big outcomes, is securing funding, making sure that we as a state are matching, doing whatever we need to do to be in a position to take full advantage. The next outcome is that we really thought about having a comprehensive policy package in 2022. That's still on here. I think we are slowing our roll a little bit. We have a lot of little pieces and bills and policies that we will be going after in 2022. It's next year. It feels so close and it felt so far away when we were laying these out. But I think in 2023, we will have some sort of nature-based solutions, 30 by 30 comprehensive policy package that has been shopped around by different environmental groups, different conservation groups within our networks, that we are all working and using our power together to push through the Illinois State House. We hope that that will tackle things like funding for the nutrient loss reduction strategy, funding for conservation and stewardship, removing barriers to conservation and stewardship, creating jobs, and a host of other things we hope will be wrapped into that. We want to work on, so within this work, we want to work at all those same scales. I don't know how much we will contribute to the global piece, but there's a lot of federal work tied into this. We plan on advocating for the federal farm bill, for conservation packages and funding and state funding into that. And then there's also, then we'll have this policy package at the state level. And then we're also on the ground doing a lot of strategic local conservation efforts. We are working at the county levels, the local levels, working with mayors, county boards, thinking about how we can harness the power of the entire environmental and conservation and ag communities here in Illinois to move those local efforts at a little higher pace. And then our ultimate outcome is that Illinois becomes a leader in conservation. Those of you who follow the Conservation Foundation might know a little bit about Illinois conservation history. We have historically been leaders, a leading state. We had some of the really neatest biologists and naturalists come from our state. Historically, the University of Illinois, the Illinois Natural History Survey has been a leader in the field. And a lot of that has fallen off in the last 50 years of Illinois budget losses and bureaucracy. And so a big outcome is that Illinois can become a leader and other states can look to us to replicate this process of planning and collaboration, working together. I'm getting towards the end here. I've got one slide here that shows how we can restore biodiversity, address climate change, and how these pieces fit together. This was on BBC, and I like it because it shows the way that we can stack these efforts. IEC has, not just IEC, the conservation community in Illinois has a lot of coals in the fire. We're working on clean energy legislation, removing pollution, upping the sustainability process of production, doing all of these pieces. And I just love the way that this shows how these things can stack together. We can do conservation, we can do climate change action to, I don't want to say flatten the curve. I want to reverse the curve or reverse the downward trend here, how there's a part for all of this to play. This next slide gets a little bit into the specifics of the Illinois plan, which is, like I said, in its infancy. These are going to be some pieces of it, and we're working on what are the goals under all of these pieces. Under land conservation, under clean water, we have the nutrient loss reduction strategy. We have making sure people have access to clean water. We've removed lead service lines. We've got pieces under local food with protecting local food infrastructure and incentivizing farmers that are growing more than corn and soybeans. I talked a little bit about the pieces that are sort of nestled under sustainable agriculture. Those are things like the cover crop program here in Illinois, the STAR program, which evaluates and incentivizes farmers who are doing climate smart agriculture, working with the agencies to educate farmers. So there's all these smaller pieces nestled under these sort of larger headings. None of this is final. Like I said, we're listening to our community. We are listening to actual communities all over Illinois to think about what should be in this plan. And so that's where we get a little bit to you guys. So how can you help? What can you do as a private citizen? So the number one thing you can do is we are going to be doing all these listening sessions. You can follow Illinois Environmental Council on social media. You can get on our email list. You can participate in these listening sessions. You can also, here, I'll flip over here. You can also always shoot me an email if you have feedback. We are also going to listen to focus groups. So if you are a duck hunter and you work with your local Ducks Unlimited and you want to get your chapter together to do a focus group and think about what would benefit you in a 30 by 30 effort at the Illinois scale, get a hold of us. We will help facilitate that. We'll get you resources. As an individual, you can share the action alerts when these things get as far as public policy. Contact your legislators, let them know you care about this stuff. Do the quick click actions, send emails, follow up. And then, like I said, you can always reach out to us with feedback and ideas. And yeah, so that's sort of the high level. The next slide is just that question slide. I have some, I'll probably just stop here. I have some appendix slides here at the end with a little more detail, but I might just open it to questions and see where you guys are feeling on this. yeah, just open it back up to you guys. So that's the Illinois 30 by 30 work. I'll come back on a video. There you go.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was incredible. Just amazing to see all the work that is being done. And by the way, congrats to all the work IEC did with CEJA.
Ellie and I didn't do a whole lot of that work. We'll take the thank you, but those are our fantastic colleagues have been working on that pretty much night and day for a couple of years. We've been supporting them, but they did the biggest list.
That was pretty impressive to see that get passed. So
cool. We're
very excited. All right, so a couple of questions. Elliot, thanks for your help in answering the questions. Just to kind of go through them real quick. Jenny wanted to know about the 4%. You mentioned that our state grows 4% of the food that we eat. So
yeah, I can see Elliot answered a bit here, and he's spot on. We grow acres and acres and acres of cow food, of hog food, of plastics like high fructose corn syrup. It's incredible that like we talk to folks in urban settings and in cities, and I don't want to laugh because how would you know this? Why would you not think that all of that corn growing isn't going to, we say it all the time that we feed America. I mean, that's what the Farm Bureau, the plasters everywhere. And
pumpkins,
it's just,
don't forget pumpkins.
Right, yeah, oh, and we're the number one, Illinois is the number one producer of pumpkins and horseradish.
Yeah.
But besides that, yeah, we just grow a lot of corn and soybeans that are not edible by people.
I did hear, and I'm not 100% confident on, but I'm going to say it anyway, that Illinois because of the amount of soybeans that Illinois produces, we technically contribute to the most soy sauce. That all the soybeans that we grow then get shipped over to Asia, turned into soy sauce, and then shipped back.
Yeah, and that's
the food
definitely
mileage on that is just ridiculous. So one of the things I hear a lot is we have something. I live in rural America. I live in Ashland, Illinois. I go to the coffee house, the coffee shop in the morning. I go to the diner for breakfast. And you'll hear farmers, and they are so proud that we have the blackest soil, the most fertile soil in the nation. And they are so proud that we feed America, and it's just, it's so disheartening that we are feeding 4% of Illinoisans. Only 4% of our food is coming from farmers that are growing actual food. And one of the big issues there, Ellie might have more to add, is that we provide so much assistance to commodity farmers, corn and soybeans, for good reason. Just the way the system is set up, we provide crop insurance. We do not provide any of that for someone who's growing 6 acres of potatoes or carrots or food. There's not a system for them to get crop insurance or insure those crops or have access to any sort of help there or insurance.
So we at the Conservation Foundation, our headquarters is on 60 acres, and 49 of those acres are farmed organically. And we operate a CSA, or community supported agriculture, which means people pay us, like starting next month, for shares of everything that we grow the following year. Our shareholders, for example, this year really did not get any tomatoes other than the little bitty cherry tomatoes and paste tomatoes, because the deer ate 2,000 seedling tomato plants. They normally don't touch tomatoes.
And like a CSA setup is one of the best ways you can support farmers that are growing locally, because you're sharing the risk of that farm in the same way that the federal government would share the risk of corn and soybeans. So you're helping pay for those seeds up front and sustain them throughout the season until that crop is ready.
Yeah, right. And to your point too, I think also the fact that deer are being forced into areas that are, hurt or even trying to, eat the crops that, would be great to, help local communities and stuff. I think it's also a really good highlight of the fact that with the loss of natural habitat for wildlife, they're going to continue to move into areas and affect people's lives, sometimes in negative ways. I mean, the biggest example right now, honestly, is the pandemic and the fact that COVID-19 is a zoonotic virus, meaning that it can transfer not just between person to person, but it originated in another species. There's still, I think the jury is still out on exactly what happened, but it is a very good lesson in the fact that as we encroach on wildlife habitat, there is an increased risk of this happening again. We've seen it, I mean, multiple times. I mean, COVID-19, HIV, AIDS, I think syphilis too, those all originated in other species. They did not start in human beings. And as we continue to deforest and that kind of thing at like a global level, we're going to continue to see things like this happen. And it's definitely kind of a scary prospect for at least the human race.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And, the more of that land that we develop, the more interactions with wildlife we're going to have. And, tomato plants generally, from my understanding, don't taste good. It's not a preferred food source, but the drought that we experienced this year was just so severe. It was the only thing they could find to eat. So 2,000 tomato plants right down the drain.
Yeah, that's definitely a shame. I see some questions in the chat. If we want to answer those really quick, just a couple here.
I'll take, Mary is asking if the Forest Preserve Districts, IDNR, CMAP, anyone else has suggested land parcels to be preserved. So we have definitely been in conversations with all of those agencies and organizations. Someone did like a statewide assessment. There's the natural areas inventory. There are some lists of places that are ready to be preserved. A lot of land trusts they have their like pieces that they would love to work on if they can purchase them in a manner that works for the landowner and for them. So yeah, these ideas of which pieces could be part of this are out there and are ready for analysis. A tool, I'm going to type this in, a really neat tool that you can use, the Prairie State Conservation Coalition put it together, is the iView map. And it has all of the protected land. And you can, if you're a GIS person, you can download the whole data set and play with it. It has all of the protected land in Illinois, and whether it's publicly protected, whether it's a municipality, park district, all of those things. And you can sort of look at what's already protected. And then there are different databases that have sort of people's wish list pieces or places that are ready to be protected. But
that, like you said, is super cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
And I see this this other question here regarding lawns. This was actually a really big topic of conversation in our first listening session that we did, especially in the Chicago area, because there was an ordinance that recently passed regarding native plant registries there. There were folks that were trying to, put more, native plants into their yards and really take their lawns out of like traditional, just like grass, which is by far pretty much the largest consumption of water in the United States, or people watering their own lawns, which is kind of striking. But there's folks that wanted to put in things like pollinator plots, not only to, the fact that it looks beautiful a lot of the times if it's maintained right, but it helps support pollinator populations. And there are local governments that have really tried to crack down on people doing this because they think, it doesn't look pretty in the traditional kind of standard of what we think of as like the American lawn, I guess. So it's definitely a really important piece that we want to consider in this. I think the big thing that we want to do is prevent like local, either municipal or county governments from enacting regulations that stop people from doing that. It's an ongoing issue. I mean, one bill that we passed this year that I was super excited about was The Illinois, it was the Vegetable Garden Protection Act, or the Right to Garden Act is what the synonym that we use for it too. That took almost 3 years to get done. And it was because it was fiercely opposed. And all the bill does is just say that a local government cannot infringe on a person's right to grow their own food in their yard, as long as they're not, infringing on their neighbor's property or causing weird things like drainage issues, which we are totally understand. We don't want somebody to put up something that's going to impact their neighbors. But if they're not, they should be able to do this. And it was a 3-year battle with a woman we worked with named Nicole Virgil that lives in Elmhurst, and they had a local government that, they didn't care about people having gazebos in their yard, but when it came to having a hoop house to grow their vegetables during the winter, man, they did not like it. And those are the kind of things that we want to fix. People need to be able to do this without, we want to educate people into doing this, but if their local governments aren't going to let them, then that's a big barrier that we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to put a plug in right now. For those of you here in Illinois, we, through the Conservation Foundation, have a Conservation at Home program where we encourage people to put native plants into your yard. And it's actually a certification program. So for no charge, you can have one of our Conservation at Home staff members come out, walk around your yard with you, make recommendations on native plants. And when you have a variety of native plants, you're addressing stormwater issues, removing invasive species, that kind of thing, you can get your yard certified and be part of the program. You get a nice little sign that goes up in your yard. It's really great. I'm actually going out to visit with a homeowner tomorrow who has a new property. She knows she's got invasive species on there, but she just needs help identifying things so she knows what to get rid of and what to keep. So it's a really great program. Like I said, there's no charge for that. So if anybody is on this webinar now interested in that program, drop me an email. My email is the one that you got all your notices from Zoom. So send me an email. I'd be happy to put you in touch with the right person for that. And we have actually worked with several municipalities to improve their landscape ordinances to make sure that they're not preventing things like pollinator gardens and native plants from being in there. All right, let's see, what else?
Hang on, I'm sending this one. And then I saw someone asked about Belleville Prairie and the Rockford Airport expansion. I don't have a whole lot to comment on right now, but I did throw the action alert in there. You can take action at that link. It'll generate a letter to the governor. There's a lot of behind the scenes work going on there, but we really appreciate anyone who wants to let the governor know how important that piece of prairie is.
Yeah, I personally just learned about that one too. So that's been on my list to check out as well. So
yeah,
thanks for
and there's a lot of information at that link. And then the NLI is sort of leading the charge there. And they have a lot of information at the Save Belleville Prairie Facebook page and on their email list.
Any other questions?
I see someone in the chat said, I can't believe there are laws against vegetable gardens and pollinator gardens. And I know we spent probably an inordinate time on this webinar talking about food and local food, but Ellie and I would talk for hours about it. But there was a bill, my very first bill I did at IEC was with the Stewardship Alliance, and it was about seed saving. And we wanted to codify into Illinois state law that it is legal to go to your garden, plant a seed, harvest the seed from the tomato or from the green bean or whatever it is, and save it to plant it next year. And we were met with some of the most ferocious opposition I've ever seen in my whole life from Monsanto,
from seed companies.
Farm Bureau, yeah, from seed companies. Just really did not want to see open source seed sharing and seed saving codified into a state law, especially in Illinois. And I still reference that as one of our biggest wins. It seems so simple, but it set a pretty great precedent here in Illinois that you can't, that the environmental community doesn't allow big ag to sort of step on small communities and people's rights that way. And one of the things that came of it there are these now really cute things called seed libraries that are often hosted within your local public library, where you can go check out seeds for free. It's really great if you have a community garden, you want to try out something new. You can plant them, and then they ask you to return seeds from the plants that you save. And it's a really great way to save heirloom seeds. And I just still, to this day, it's been almost 8 years. I still think it's so ridiculous that was a fight.
So I actually worked with a Boy Scout who was doing an Eagle Scout project, and she put in a pollinator garden in a community-owned plot, and actually put up a little mailbox there that says seed swap or something like that. And so stocked it with a bunch of seeds from the native plants in the pollinator garden that she had, brochures about our conservation at home program, little things like that. And people could go and
so neat,
take out and drop off and just exchange all their native seeds.
Monsanto would have said that was opening the doors to domestic terrorism. People would be dropping off like drug seeds, and I don't know what their argument was. Wild, absolutely wild.
Yeah, they thought people were going to be sharing their patented genetic, soybean seeds and that kind of thing, which of course nobody wants to grow that in their yard. Like, it's not gonna be good. Yeah, it's always fun stuff.
What are you going to do with that anyway? I mean, I'm going to plant 5 field corn seeds in my yard.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would plug just really quick is that if you as an individual or as a member of the environmental community are ever going up against a barrier or a problem, similar to Nicole Virgil was just having a personal issue where she wasn't allowed to grow her own food in her community, we are your advocates, and that's our job. So you are more than welcome to reach out to us. And it's our job to help advocate and navigate the policies there for you.
Absolutely, definitely. And like I said, we have also helped with these landscape ordinances, people to go up against them too. And one of the littlest things is to, people want to call native plants weeds. Well, but they're not. They're ornamental, and the only proof you need of that is they're sold in garden centers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that said, there are some invasive things that are sold in garden centers, but those native things are also sold there. So they're ornamental.
Yeah. I mean, another great example of that, sorry, I know we're a little bit over time, but one bill that passed maybe 4 or 5 years ago now was one that said that counties were not allowed to list milkweed as a noxious weed under their county statutes. Yeah. Which was a wild one. And the reason that one got momentum is because people started to realize how much the monarch butterfly was going to decline. And there were counties that had it on the books that said you cannot plant this stuff in the county legally, which is wild considering it was native anyways. People just didn't like the way it looked. And now we're saying, like, no, you can't ban a native plant from just growing out, on the side of the road. Like, it's gotta stay.
Monarchs have been great for that. When I was going through my master's program, and they were called charismatic megafauna, my favorite terms. Charismatic megafauna, those big things that people are going to care about, and by preserving them, you're also protecting all these other little things that nobody else cares about.
Yeah, every effort to protect a monarch is going to protect 100 other pollinator species. Yeah,
rusty patched bumblebee.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which, to bring us full circle, was incidentally found at Belleville Prairie.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, hey, there we go. There we go. All right. I am not seeing any other questions, but I want to thank all of you for attending today, and as well as thanking my guests, Lindsay and Elliot. And this has just been a fantastic discussion. I have learned a lot. I hope the rest of you have learned a lot as well, and really, really enjoyed this conversation. So the recording will be put up on YouTube within the next 24 hours, probably by the end of tonight. And hope everybody has a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night, and we will see you next month to talk about edible things that you can put in your yard. Once again, coming full circle.
I might need to attend that one. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. And our speaker is really great too. She did another little short video with us and everybody loved it. So we're on YouTube. Just search The Conservation Foundation. You'll find us. All right. Take care, everybody. Good night.